October 13th, 1955. The piston engine is dead. On this night, the Douglas DC7, the most advanced airliner in the world, was murdered at a cocktail party. A lavish black-tie cocktail party is underway in a penthouse overlooking the East River in Manhattan. The host is Juan Trippe, the ruthless boss of Pan Am. In the room are the CEOs of every major airline and the executives of Douglas Aircraft. At this moment, Douglas is at the top of the world. They've just released the DC-7C 7Cs, the most advanced piston plane ever built and the undisputed pride of the industry. Trippe stands up, clinks his glass, and makes an announcement that sucks the oxygen out of the room. He reveals that Pan Am has just placed a massive order for 45 jetliners. In one sentence, Juan Trippe had just made every plane in that room, including the brand-new multi-million-dollar DC-7, a museum piece. Douglas had spent years perfecting the piston engine, creating a mechanical masterpiece that could cross the Atlantic in one go. But while they were polishing the last great piston airliner, their biggest customer was already planning its funeral. This is the story of the DC-7, the plane that won the race, only to find out the finish line had been moved. The Douglas DC-7 was born from a contract that the Douglas Aircraft Company did not want to sign. On a scheduled domestic sector in the early 1950s, a brand new DC-7 is cruising over the continental United States when one of its Wright R-3350 engines catches fire. The crew shuts it down, feathers the propeller, and diverts to the nearest available airport. The aircraft lands safely, the investigation begins, and the finding is recorded in the maintenance log alongside dozens of identical entries from other carriers operating the same type. The engine was running at maximum continuous power because the airline's published schedule required it. And the published schedule required it because the DC-7 had been sold on the promise of a coast-to-coast crossing in under 8 hours with a single crew, which was the legal flight time ceiling under Civil Air Regulations Article 4B. And meeting that promise at revenue payload required power settings that the R-3350's power recovery turbines were accumulating damage to sustain. Douglas had not gone looking for this problem. In 1952, the company already had the DC-6B in full production, a Pratt & Whitney double WASP-powered airliner that had rebuilt Douglas's commercial reputation after a catastrophic series of in-flight fuel system fires in 1946, earned a clean certification record, and established itself as the most reliable and commercially successful piston airliner on the market. Douglas had no engineering reason to replace it, and no financial reason to take on the risk of a new development program. C.R. Smith, the president of American Airlines, provided the reason. He wanted an airliner that could fly non-stop from New York to Los Angeles and back, on a published schedule, under the 8-hour crew duty limit, with a full revenue passenger load, a mission the DC-6B could not fly. Smith placed an order for 25 aircraft at a total price of $40 million, structured to cover Douglas's entire projected development cost, and Douglas signed. The aircraft that resulted used the DC-6B's wing without changing the span, extended the fuselage 40 inches over the DC-6B through a plug inserted aft of the wing, and fitted 4 Wright R-3350 duplex Cyclone turbo compound engines, producing 3,400 horsepower each at takeoff, the most powerful piston engines available in commercial aviation, and the only power plant on the market capable of meeting the required performance. Pratt & Whitney, Douglas's preferred engine supplier, had no suitable alternative. The WASP Major had its own reliability record, and Pratt & Whitney had not developed an effective larger engine, so Douglas went to Wright Aeronautical and accepted the R-3350 with its known limitations because the contract required an aircraft that no other available engine could power. The DC-7 prototype flew for the first time on the 18th of May 1953 from the Douglas facility in Santa Monica, California. American Airlines received its first production aircraft in November of that year and placed it into service on the 29th of November 1953, inaugurating the first scheduled non-stop coast-to-coast passenger service in the history of American commercial aviation. The market the DC-7 entered on that date already contained 3 established long-range piston airliners, the Lockheed L-1049 Super Constellation on transatlantic and trans-Pacific routes for TWA and KLM, The Boeing 377 Stratocruiser on North Atlantic and Trans-Pacific services for Pan American, BOAC, Northwest Orient, and United Airlines, and the Bristol Britannia turboprop in development for BOAC's long-haul Empire network. All three were flying passengers on the routes the DC-7 was built to win when the DC-7 entered service, and all three would be overtaken by jet aircraft before the decade ended, at the same cocktail party on the same October evening by the same announcement. The Douglas DC-7C 7Cs was the furthest point piston engine commercial aviation ever reached, and its specifications reflected every demand the transatlantic route structure had placed on Douglas's engineers. The four Wright R-3350 engines were 18-cylinder twin-row air-cooled radials, fitted with power recovery turbines, exhaust-driven turbines geared to the crankshaft that added approximately 350 horsepower per engine over the base output, bringing the total takeoff rating to 3,400 horsepower each. The turbines ran above 20,000 revolutions per minute at temperatures near the fatigue limits of the aluminum and steel alloys available in the mid-1950s, and when a turbine wheel failed, it failed catastrophically, driving fragments through the engine structure in a failure mode with no precedent in earlier piston commercial aviation. Maximum speed, rated power, was 406 miles per hour. Range with maximum fuel was 5,635 miles, sufficient for the New York to London sector westbound with a reserve, which was the specific capability Pan American had contracted the DC-7C to deliver. The two 5-foot wing root inserts added to the DC-7C over earlier variants served two functions simultaneously. They increased total fuel volume, which the aircraft carried in 8 integral wing tanks totaling 7,824 U.S. gallons, and they moved the engine nacelles farther from the fuselage, reducing propeller-generated cabin noise that had been a documented passenger complaint on the baseline DC-7. The fuselage reached 112 feet and 3 inches through two 40-inch plugs, one forward of the wing and one aft, giving the DC-7C a cabin capacity of up to 105 passengers in a mixed configuration. Airlines that ran the R-335 conservatively, reduced power settings, extended overhaul intervals, found the DC-7 manageable. Swissair built its entire DC-7C maintenance program around that approach and sustained reliable transatlantic operations. Carriers that operated at maximum continuous power to meet competitive block times accumulated in-flight engine failures at a rate that produced regular diversions, documented in Aviation Week on the 21st of April, 1958. The ceiling of piston aviation was reliable when treated gently, and the schedules that justified buying it required that it not be. The Douglas DC-7 accumulated 82 incidents and accidents across its service life, with 714 fatalities recorded across all variants. On the 30th of June 1956, United Airlines Flight 718 collided over the Grand Canyon with TWA Flight 2, a Lockheed Super Constellation, killing all 128 people aboard both aircraft. The collision drove the passage of the Federal Aviation Act of 1958, which created the Federal Aviation Administration and established mandatory radar separation across all domestic airspace, infrastructure the DC-7 had made necessary by outrunning the control system built around slower aircraft. On the 25th of March 1958, Braniff Flight 971 caught fire in the No. 1 engine after takeoff from Miami and crashed short of the return runway, killing 9 of 24 people aboard. On the 31st of December 1972, Roberto Clemente and 4 others died when a chartered DC-7 crashed into the Atlantic Ocean after takeoff from San Juan, Puerto Rico, carrying earthquake relief supplies for Nicaragua. 338 aircraft were delivered across 3 production variants. The baseline DC-7, 105 built, entered service with American Airlines in November 1953. The DC-7B, 112 built, added higher gross weight and optional nacelle fuel tanks and entered transatlantic service with Pan Am in the summer of 1955. The DC-7C 7Cs, 121 built, added extended span wings and full westbound Atlantic capability and entered service in 1956. From 1959, Douglas converted existing airframes into DC-7F dedicated freighters, with large forward and rear cargo doors, extending commercial life on routes where piston aircraft remained cost-effective. The Douglas DC-7's frontline passenger service life for the airlines that paid the most for it lasted approximately 5 years. American Airlines introduced the DC-7 in November 1953 and had replaced most of its piston fleet with Boeing 707s by 1960. United Airlines, which operated 57 of the baseline DC-7, the largest fleet of that variant among all carriers, retired the type ahead of the DC-6Bs it had nominally superseded because the older aircraft was cheaper to maintain and held resale value more reliably on the second-hand market. Pan American transitioned its North Atlantic routes to jets within 3 years of the 707's entry into service, and the cost of each DC-7C, $1,155,560 in 1956, rising to $1,343,385 by 1958, returned to commercial life measured in seasons rather than the decades a jet fleet would generate. The Wright R-3350's maintenance record followed the DC-7 into the resale market. Carriers running both the DC-6B and the DC-7 replaced the DC-7s first when jets arrived because the DC-6B was easier to operate, cheaper to overhaul, and sold at better second-hand prices. The DC-6B remained in active commercial passenger service into the 1980s. The last DC-7 in any commercial capacity, a converted aerial firefighting tanker, retired in October 2020, 67 years after the type's first flight, and a forward fuselage section is preserved at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. The answer to the question Juan Trippe answered at the Manhattan cocktail party on the 13th of October 1955, why the DC-7 was the last great piston airliner ever built, was present in every decision made during the 5 years before that evening. Douglas built it because C.R. Smith's $40 million order left no alternative. The airlines flew it at maximum power because competitive schedules required it. The engines wore out because the metallurgy of the period could not indefinitely sustain what the North Atlantic route structure demanded, and Trippe ordered jets because he had already calculated that no propeller airliner, however capable, could remain competitive once the 707 halved the crossing time. The DC-7 reached the absolute ceiling of piston-powered commercial aviation and was retired in 5 years.